So let's talk about where Disneyland is today, or really where the Disney company is today. A State of the Union address, a State of Disney address. And I'll say up front that this is a bit of a tough video for me to produce because I try to stay positive at all times. I am constantly looking for the bright side and for, a silver lining somewhere. And especially considering, the video that we put out last Wednesday where I got a little emotional thinking about just wanting to have that shared experience with other like-minded Disneyland fans and trying to be positive and looking forward to a brighter Disneyland future. But nevertheless, I live in the same world as the rest of you, and I am painfully aware of the precarious position that the Disney company finds itself in right now. So let's get into that. Just where are we today? Well, Disneyland as a park is still closed, and nobody has any earthly idea when it's going to reopen. Anybody who says that they have a date or guesses a date is pure speculation. I don't think the Disney company even knows right now. Really, it all depends on the state of California. The only thing that I feel confident in saying in that regard is that Disneyland will open as early as is possible, depending on whatever the state of California says. As soon as Disneyland gets the green light, I feel like they are going to open the park. In fact, I am certain that Disney is desperate to open Disneyland. And we're going to get into that in just a few minutes, but let's kind of move forward and just try to figure out where we are today. Downtown Disney is still open, sort of. There was concern that they may close again due to the recent rollbacks from the state of California. But those rollbacks actually only sounded more severe than they really were. As a matter of fact, it was the same thing that they had said a week or 10 days prior to that. And really, downtown Disney was already in that spot. Basically, they were saying no more indoor dining, no gyms, no malls. But that didn't really apply to downtown Disney. They were already doing outdoor dining only. So it didn't affect downtown Disney at all. Meanwhile, Walt Disney World over in Florida is completely open. All parks are open as of yesterday. And again, there has been concern or curiosity wondering why the parks are open. People are asking the question, considering the state of Florida, in their current statistical position, as it were. But they are still open, and they are going to stay open. I am positive of this. They are going to stay open unless, barring any, drastic occurrence, anything, major happening. In fact, I'm expecting them to ramp things up a little bit. The parks right now are, for the most part, empty. There were some early images reported on opening day. Some early, look at that. There's too many people here, not enough social distance. But those were isolated incidents, I think, and they were pretty quickly cleared up. You look at the images that are going around today throughout the parks, and it looks pretty much like this. This is more representative of how the parks are today than some of those, scary images that some might have seen at opening. Disney has also said publicly that they are going to start opening more spots for annual pass holders, more reservation spots. And conventional wisdom would suggest this is because they're the only ones who are showing up right now. And tickets are on sale. You can buy a ticket right now to go to the park tomorrow if you want. So for those who are worried about that wouldn't be the case, we heard some, again, I'll mention, but unfortunately that is about the extent of the good news coming out of Disney or the Disney parks right now. Well, actually, all of Disney for that matter. Disney needs Disney World to stay open and for Disneyland to get open. Of course, it's easy to say that the Disney company is one of the richest companies in the world, and that was true 4 months ago. But their revenue stream has been decimated by this virus and by the lockdown. Let's take a look at the numbers and see if we can do a little armchair math. In 2019, the Disney company earned revenues of $70 billion. But some may be surprised to know that the single largest revenue generator, number one, is Disney parks. Some might assume it was the studios that made the most money, because we always hear their numbers, but it's not even close. It's not even close between parks and studios. In 2019, the parks earned $26 billion. Second was the networks. They earned $25 billion, and studios was down the list at $11 billion. But you put those together, Disney parks and the studios, which are the two sectors of revenue that have been hurt the most by this lockdown, and that is roughly half of Disney's income wiped out completely. The networks were less affected, but affected nonetheless. There's no sports going on right now, so obviously that affects ESPN and their ability to sell ad space on that channel. So ESPN is a brand that was already in decline, not looking any better these days either. So let's do a little bit more of that armchair math. If Disney earned $70 billion last year, that's roughly $5.8 billion per month. And if the parks and studios represent roughly half of that revenue, then you were talking about $2.9 billion per month lost, for a total of $11.6 billion over the 4-month period during the lockdown. $11.6 billion that they've lost. Now, again, totally off the cuff and rudimentary math, but it does give us at least some sort of context about the size of the numbers that we're talking about with respect to losses for the Disney company. And don't forget, they're still paying, they're still incurring expenses. Just look at the Disney parks. There are still construction projects going on. There is still routine maintenance happening in the parks. They're still paying some cast members some salaries. So all these things are happening while they're not generating any income. So that disparity just keeps growing and growing, and they keep digging a bigger and bigger hole of losses, of debt. Meanwhile, let's not forget also that it cost them a ton of dough to get Walt Disney World ready for guests post-lockdown, as we're experiencing today. That costs a lot of money. So when we say that they don't want Disney World to close, part of that reason not is just for the income that they're receiving, but so that they don't have to restart that engine. So they'd have to incur all that expense again, shutting Disney World down, then restarting it again, and going through that whole process. So the goal there is to keep the parks open, but do their absolute most, their absolute best to make them safe, enjoyable, hospitable to guests in this current environment. It gets worse. Well, let's talk about China for a second. Now, I don't want to get into too much detail here simply because I can't. This is not a topic that I'm very well versed in, but it is something to consider. China and U.S. relations right now are not very good. And so that is obviously going to have an impact on Shanghai and Hong Kong. And the hits kind of keep on coming. Disney Plus. Some people say, okay, that's a thing that's still, that's a viable thing that Disney has that is operating. They are making or releasing new content on Disney Plus. So it's kind of like the networks. It's still going. However, a majority of the Disney Plus revenue has already been collected, and that was done, before they even launched the site. They were booking people for 1, 2, or 3 year commitments at Disney Plus. I know because I got one, and you pay the whole thing up front. So they have already collected that money's in the books already. So I haven't paid for Disney Plus since D23. And you can even make a similar observation for annual pass holders. Those are the guests that are appearing in the parks right now. Those are the guests who are most interested in going to Disneyland at this moment. At least that's what my eyes and ears tell me. However, like Disney Plus, that is revenue that has also already been collected and is in the books. I've already paid my annual pass, or I've already made my payments. They've already got my money. So it's not like that's new revenue occurring. Now you might say, well, David, you make a monthly payment, so each month they're getting their revenue. But as far as the bookkeeping goes, to best of my understanding, that money has already been, it's predictable. It's put on the books as earned. Even though it's being, doled out in monthly installments, they can say, I'm getting $1,200 from this person this year for this annual pass. So in both of those cases, there is very little new revenue occurring for Disney, even though those types of deals are currently operational. In other words, Disney's in a tough spot. They're starting to venture into territory where they may have to start taking on some really crushing debt in order to keep the lights on. And some of you may have heard the Apple rumors, and that's where, an Apple takeover or buyout might occur when Disney is vulnerable due to all that debt, and they need somebody to relieve them of that burden. And Apple would come in, pay off that debt for a certain amount of shares, and then they become, a majority shareholder. And now what do you got? You got Apple owning Disney, and that is when executives, people in the suits, start to get nervous. Rumors are that there's a lot of infighting going on right now in the executive offices. There are two reported camps. There's the camp that wants to spend their way out of this situation, and then there's the camp that wants to save every dollar that they can, which, by the way, is very common. That is the most typical scenario in any business that's hurting is they try to decide if they should, spend more money or to save that money. Neither one of which, by the way, is ideal. But it does sound like the savers are winning. Projects are being cut left and right. Just the other day, they announced that Mary Poppins was pretty much done. We're not going to have the Mary Poppins attraction at Disney World. The Epcot overhaul is being pared down significantly. A lot of the cooler things, the high ticket items, are probably not going to get done. And we've heard. What was it? They confirmed. Rivers of Light, was it, that was canceled now for good? Stitches is gone, even though that kind of everybody knew that was happening. And Primeval Whirl closed forever. That's official now. Again, not the biggest news, but it does shed light on the fact that they are trying to trim fat anywhere they can. And it does sound like also all of the plans for the 50th anniversary at Disney World have been canceled. They're going to eliminate all or most of that. Likewise, here at Disneyland, no 65th. That makes sense, though. The park isn't even open, so the 65th anniversary, for which I am dressed, the 65th anniversary of Disneyland is pretty much a non-starter. There's nothing going to be happening there. And we heard previously a couple weeks ago that they were planning to stagger some of the projects that are going to be kept, that are going to be ongoing, but they're going to stagger them, meaning they're not going to be working on all of them at once. They're going to work on this project for a little while, then they're going to work on this project, and that project goes dormant. Then they're going to work on this project, and then that project goes dormant, and they kind of cycle that, which means it's going to take years for anything to get done. And I have to say, I don't blame them for any of those decisions, mind you, because I do think that expansions and refurbs are kind of overrated. And I say that from the perspective that there is not a single thing, there's not a single thing wrong with Disneyland as is. Same for Disney World. These places were packed to the brim every day, just as they are, without any expectation of a new thing happening. They were packed, and they would stay packed. People would keep going if they didn't do anything at all. They could take 5 or 10 years off, and I don't think anybody would care. They could take more than that off and not do a single thing. I would be personally just fine with that because I love Disneyland just how it is. Save all that money that you were thinking about putting into, a Tron ride at Tomorrowland or the Epcot expansion or whatever, and put it back into the parks to make it better as is, to put a new shine on everything, to make it safer for guests, to make it, modern, contemporary, to get caught up. Now, I want a new ride just like anybody else, but when it comes to the financial stability, for the solvency of the Disney Corporation, I would gladly sacrifice any and all of the new stuff just to make sure that I could go to Disneyland in a couple months if I felt like it. I just want the parks to be open and to be viable. Okay, so we talked about the drama, the infighting in the executive offices, and there is some visible evidence of there being discord, and that is with the departure of Michael Kohlglazer. He just left the company on Wednesday, and now Kohlglazer was the president of international parks, Shanghai and all them. He left to go run Virgin Galactic. Now, he's going to be the CEO, which is obviously, a title upgrade and probably a money upgrade too. But I think I would rather have Disney on my resume than Virgin Galactic, because that is exactly what it sounds like, I think. Right? It is? They're talking about commercial flights in space? Is that what we're talking about? You know what? That could go either way now that I think about it, because it was international parks, and they're not really involved in this drama, I don't think. That the situation at hand with Disney is with the statewide parks, with Florida and Anaheim, and how to get those parks open, how to get those parks going, and how we're hurting here. I think things are going okay international wise. Disneyland Paris just opened. Shanghai's still open. They did have to close Hong Kong, but that wasn't Disney's decision. But I think they'll be back open again because things seem to be more or less under control in those countries. So I don't know. Maybe the cold glacier thing isn't related, but I could see how one might think that they would be. I could understand that argument. As I kind of reflect on this situation, it almost, I just can't believe that this is where we are right now. It wasn't that long ago when I thought Disney as a company was too big to fail. But a global pandemic don't pay no mind. A global pandemic don't care about Disney or any other company. And that's where we are today, in this precarious place. Which takes me to my next point. I have been often asked, and this is before the parks opened, I was asked a lot, do you think that Disney would sell a ticket at a reduced price because we're getting a reduced product? Makes sense, quite logical. There's a lot of things that we can't do at Disney World right now. Can't do a lot of those things. And so we're paying the same price for less product. But the reality is, I believe, to be the exact opposite. I would expect Disney to raise prices under these conditions. They need to earn more per ticket today, more than they ever have before. It is my belief that even when all the parks are open and they remove more of the restrictions and they allow more guests into the parks, they could even remove the mask requirements and the social distancing. They could make the parks just like they were before. All that can happen, and I believe there will still be a significant percentage of guests who just simply choose not to go. Imagine sort of the post-Galaxy's Edge opening scenario where we thought we were going to get more people. The parks were going to be uninhabitable, and instead we had less people, less guests in the park. It was quite a strange phenomenon. Imagine that scenario applying here, because all the messaging, all the, everything that's being told to guests right now is stay away. Don't go to the parks. Now, some of us, myself included, are still going to go because there are some diehards out there who really love Disneyland and they want to go. But there's still going to be plenty of people who are on the fence. We're just going to say, you know what? I'm going to wait a year or two or three or who knows. That is a significant percentage of guests. And that is where supply and demand will kick in. I've said before that demand was infinite for Disneyland, but that's not the case anymore. I've said before that demand was infinite for Disneyland, and the only way for Disney to change or affect the supply and demand curve was to create more supply, i.e., more actual parks. That is just not the case under these conditions. This is completely different. Now Disney might actually find themselves in this little sweet spot where they can sell fewer tickets because there's less demand, but at a higher price. The people who still want to go are still willing to pay more for that ticket. So it's going to hit both sides. Fewer people are going to come to the park, but those that do will be willing, I believe, to pay a higher price for their ticket. Disney is going to ask for another $20, $30, $40, $50 per ticket. They're going to ask for another few $100s on the AP, knowing that they're going to sell fewer because fewer people are going to go anyway. And that is my prediction. I predict that we're going to see some significant price increases for both single-day tickets and annual passes. As a matter of fact, I think that there's going to be an even greater reliance, even more effort on Disney's part to sell annual passes. Some thought that this might be the end of the annual pass, but I believe it's going to be the exact opposite. I think that we're going to see even more annual passes sold for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. Disney needs money today. They need a bunch of money up front that they can count on, guaranteed revenue that they can put on the books and show it to their investors and say, look, we've got this much money coming in for this year, and it sort of evens things out. There's no guessing. There's no guessing. So they want guaranteed income on the book. So look for Disney to sell or try to sell a ton of annual passes in the near future. Look for perks for annual pass holders. Look for annual pass holder events in the park to encourage more people to buy them, at least for the short term. But I do think that this will be a long-term plan. Now, I know all of this sounds very bleak and very scary, but I am personally still very optimistic because I believe, first of all, that we as a humanity are going to get through this, just like we've gotten through everything else in our history. And as such, I think the same is true for Disney. There is just too much desire for a thing like Disney, just like they're not going to cancel sports. They're not going to, there's a lot of things that seem like they're in bad shape right now, but they will survive. They will come around. It's not going to go anywhere. You need only look at Walt Disney World. Now, I know when I say that, there's not a lot of people going there, but Disney is acting as if. They are putting out the effort. They're trying to make it work at Disney World however they can. And we're seeing the same thing in a lot of other places. The world is trying to say, okay, we're going to adjust. We're going to find a way. It's a little hard at first because, everybody wants things or thinks things are just going to go away real quick. And you have to accept that reality. And once they accept that reality of the new world that we're living in, then they can start making adjustments. And I believe that Disney will make those adjustments just like everybody else has. Just like we're seeing people have dinner in the parking lot in front of Ruby's now instead of going inside. They put tables out there. We're doing the best we can under these circumstances. And eventually things will, start to come back. And as for, me personally as a fan of Disneyland, all we're looking for right now is the green light from the state of California. All right, that's it, guys. That's our State of Disney address for this morning. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Please do remember to subscribe to our channel. Please remember to wear a mask. Let's get this over with, okay? So we don't have to worry about any of this anymore. Just wear the mask and let's get this over with. Be kind to one another. Support one another. Be kind to cast members when you go to the park. Celebrate Disney's 65th anniversary with us, by the way. That's where I'm going. As soon as I wrap this video, I'm going to turn off this camera. I'm going to get in my car and drive to downtown Disney, and I'm going to go say happy birthday to the place that I love. It is their 65th anniversary today. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Fresh bite.